Welcome to The Real Deal with Josh and Charles. I'm Josh.
And this is Charles.
Today on the show, we're tackling two movies that span, a whole quarter century. One, Hardware by Richard Stanley. The other, Vacation.
Finally made it to Noun Week.
A film both nouns. We thought we'd really pare down this week and stick to single word films. I don't even know who directed Vacation.
I think it was the other guy. I think it was that other guy, the director guy.
Oh, wow. Actually, I'm happy that I was negligent in my research. It turns out the great John Francis Daley of Freaks and Geeks fame was one of two directors on the Vacation remake.
See?
Who knew?
I was right. Actually, probably everyone, Josh. Anyone who saw the movie or looked it up on IMDb.
Well, I like to think that if I didn't know, how could I assume anyone else knew?
Yeah, good point. All of us, we're just all waiting for you to pass on your wisdom.
Well, Charles, I don't want to embarrass you on mic, but you do have a $60 microphone that you've been talking about, and that does certainly elevate you above most of the filthy masses listening to the show.
Hey, Josh, but what about you? You're using one of those boom mics, aren't you? One of those booms?
Oh, yeah, I'm just swinging on a boom. That's just, for me, that makes me feel very cinematically focused when I'm talking about film and the art of visual and how you put together a movie film. And the boom really, it's a sort of visual metaphor that I respond to because I'm actually swinging on it.
Swinging on a boom. Well, at least you're swinging on a boom. I'm just I got this shitty plastic mic. It came with the mic, that $60 mic. It came with a little, I don't know, just this little plastic mic. It's like, it's literally 4 inches tall. I don't know where they thought this was going to go, but I have to put it on. I found that my dresser is the tallest piece of furniture in my apartment. So I'm on the dresser, but it's still way too short. So I have to stand here the whole time, stand here in stoop mode, just contorting my neck into all this neck yoga.
I like the idea of stoop mode, but two, I'm sort of imagining you sort of like doing a downward dog style position on like a hardwood floor, yelling into a small.
Oh yeah, it's exactly like downward dog. Yeah, exactly. If downward dog only involved your neck, it's exactly what that is. Sometimes I just stand up totally straight and just lean over the mic, with my spine all erect, but my neck is just totally fucking slouched down. And then sometimes I just lower myself slowly as my neck bends back a little bit, and I just I start doing as much of a split that I can, and it's just like it's one of those transitions. I did yoga 3 times. I love yoga. I only did it 3 times though, but those vinyasas. I think I got the whole neck vinyasa going down here.
You've now suggested that there's a thing called neck yoga, which frankly is taking my attention away from Hardware by Richard Stanley and making me want to know a lot more about neck yoga.
Oh yeah, you'd be surprised how much motion you got in there. I didn't even realize it until I picked up this fucking microphone and had to use this piece of shit tripod.
And that's our consumer tip of the episode. Go get your own plastic tripod.
Yeah, it's good for the soul.
Today on The Real Deal with Josh and Charles, we're going to kick things off with a discussion of a truly bizarre and wonderful film, Hardware by Richard Stanley, released by Miramax in 1990. It's a dystopian tale of... Well, Charles, I'm interested in you capturing what this is a tale of exactly. I know you're very excited to talk about this today, but it's a story of robots, nuclear fallout, a bleak wasteland, an unnamed city, and denizens focus simply on surviving day to day.
Josh, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks, Charles.
But yeah, it's an amazing movie. I mean, we'll dive into all the beautiful emotional aspects of the film probably, when we do that. But right off the bat, this movie was visually stunning. It was so good. I hadn't seen a movie like this. It just brings me back. It just had wonderful use of colors and sound and the way it edited things. It's just like it reminded me of how playful and experimental movies used to be, just visually. All that stuff that was in there. Hardware it's just stunning. It was, I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's just like it really brought me back to an earlier time, and so it's so easy to forget. And nowadays, you can just make a CGI whatever the fuck you want, and it's so easy for people who studied all that shit. But it looks easy. Hardware just it made it really obvious to me how much went into making the movie and that sense of invention. That was all of it. So much of filmmaking is all about invention. And I don't know if you remember exactly, but I feel like it was probably, somewhere 2010-ish, where they just sort of abandoned
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure. I think in a way we all remember 2010, Charles. But
Hey, what about the babies, Josh? The babies. Just last time you gave me all that fucking shit about not recognizing what it's like to be British. So, this time it's on you. What about the babies, Josh?
yeah, and hey, babies, if you're listening, write in. Yeah, your barely formed bones are still fusing over your undeveloped cerebellum. Good on you. It takes all types in this crazy world. That's what my mug says here at work. So.
Oh yeah, I got that mug too, Josh.
Hey, I thought of a T-shirt for hardware for the characters to wear. It would say, "You don't have to be crazy to be in this movie," and then it does like an ellipses, and then it says like, well, then there's the other ellipses, and it says, "But it helps."
But it helps.
Get it? Because it's a pretty intense movie.
Yeah. Okay, I think you might have had too many ellipses, but yeah, not bad. Not bad.
Yeah, it's pretty good stuff.
The hardware was intense. So much fucking weird shit's going on all the time. I just amazed by all that. Just like weird people, weird sets, weird all this. Who directed the movie again, Josh?
Richard Stanley.
Right. Richard Stanley. That guy. That guy must have been through a lot. It just seemed like hardware is insane.
Well, it's funny you mention the great Richard Stanley because he's incredibly difficult to track down as a human, which is we'll parlay some of this information to the making of the film. I wanted to say that it was fortuitous of us to revisit hardware in the year of Mad Max Fury Road, because this is really
definitely
an incredibly appropriate companion piece to sort of one of the more unexpected hits of the year.
Well, now that you mention it, I thought of Mad Max as well. I mean, it came to mind for me for a few different reasons.
Yeah.
But mostly, I just want to let listeners know that we don't watch these movies together. We're not in the same room. We don't even live anywhere near each other. I'm not even sure what Josh looks like.
This is one of those Craigslist gone really, really wrong situations where we're locked into this thing, and we're just figuring it out as we go along. So
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about Craigslist. Once you're on it, there's really no way out. You can haggle. We can just keep haggling over this price, but we're committed. We're in it.
You know what? Let's dive into the movie. Hardware is a movie where we're really told almost nothing, which I love. I'm a huge, huge glutton for punishment, and I love being thrust into... I think, so many science fiction worlds kind of get lost up their own assholes trying to world create so aggressively, and, to create these rules and laws and parameters and ominous political portents and what have you. But hardware really just begins in a surreal, I would say, fans of Friedkin's Sorcerer might feel at home in the bleak psychedelic landscape that we open up in. Towards the end of that amazing film, the protagonist finds himself lost in Nicaragua and crawling through a sort of moon-like landscape of almost fluorescent purples and heavily saturated colors. And this movie begins in a vermilion desertscape with bleak, unending clouds churning above the sand, pockmarked with the debris of a civilization driven to war. And a guy in a big old duster with a cool-ass hat walking around with a crazy old backpack.
Yes, I love that guy. That guy was great. And what's even better is that he just is immediately thrown out of the movie, which is awesome. It's just like that mask, the backpack. He looks so fucking cool, like exactly the kind of person that would be in this world, that would be our badass main character. And then fucking 5 minutes in the movie, he's just gone. And I think that's great. He's just like totally unimportant to the movie. And Hardware, I think, just does a great job with his characters overall. And just right off the bat, we're just immediately into it. Later in the movie, everyone who's in the movie after this point they feel like they're people. And I think it's interesting that we start the movie off with this rugged superhero type character who looks like he should be here, and then he just suddenly erased from the script and he just never comes back.
Well, he bookends the film.
He does?
He reappears.
Oh,
yeah. What the fuck, Charles?
I mean, I mean, he isn't the driving force of the movie. We're quickly moved away from this guy and left with a bunch of weak, ineffective people. It's like here's this guy who we think the movie should be about, a movie about the post-apocalyptic wasteland where only the strong survive.
And instead, we're gifted with the great Dylan McDermott, who steers this baby home as only Dylan McDermott can.
Exactly. I mean, we're given some B-list guy who looks like an ex-porn star, and I only know from the the first season of American Horror Story. I just thought it was really well done, and for a story that's been done to death, this one surprisingly I think is one of the best.
Yeah, certainly. I think if anyone has slogged through Johnny Mnemonic or Hackers, it's like a countless spread of shitty movies obsessed with technology from the early 90s. And I think this is really about as good as it gets. It's based on a short piece by 2000 AD, the brilliant British underground comic world that spawned the Judge Dredd stories and of the careers of Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Grant Morrison, Brian Boland. A ton of incredibly talented people emerged from this comic subculture that came out in the late 70s in England. This was, they allude specifically to Shock, this short story by Steve McManus and Kevin O'Neill that 2000 AD published, but it also reminded me heavily one of the most brilliant things about the antagonistic, completely personalityless technological nightmare villain of the film, the truly disturbing Mark 13, is that he kills with long incisor-like poison injectors, like two long, horrible fangs. That is straight out of Judge Dredd. There's a great short story in Judge Dredd where the titular Judge Dredd encounters some vampiric robots left to survive the cursed earth of the Judge Dredd world, harvesting blood for the frozen body of the last American president who was frozen in exile for eternity somewhere in the Midwest. So fans of Judge Dredd, it's a great visual allusion to that incredible storyline, and it's truly fucking terrifying.
It is terrifying. Yeah, I think that's what makes this better than so many other movies like this. This machine, the world, it's all terrifying.
This is not, RoboCop or Terminator. This is not a machine that's remotely humanoid, remotely personable, given any sense of relationship to its task, which is to kill. This is really a machine. It's certainly skull-like and lurches around, and the brief glimpses of what we see of the robot, there's vaguely humanoid structures to it. But Stanley does not waste time personalizing this bad guy. It's just fucking pernicious, seemingly constantly mutating and reinventing. A brilliant use of stop motion animation to convey its sort of unnatural ability to repair itself. It's one of the great villainous robots of cinema.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a great point, Josh, about the humanity of it. I mean, Terminator is a similar movie, and it's also one of the only ones that I can really think of where it doesn't give a huge amount of personality to its robot villain. But even Terminator has that recognizable human exterior. And Jesus Christ, what they did with Terminator 2, where they just went off the rails with that and just, no one, we'll skip that. But Hardware, I think that just even goes one better than all these other ones where, as you said, it has absolutely no humanity to it. I mean, it has that skull-like look, but that's really it, just a skull. There's no personality. And we really don't even know its purpose, which I think is great. We know it's out to destroy people and flesh, but it's really never explained. We're only given hints. And, even in Terminator, where it's a very, robotic villain, we still get the full backstory as to what's going on, how we got to this place, and why it's doing what it's doing. Here, the Mark 13 just seems random. It seems calculated and controlled, but it seems totally random without really any purpose. We don't really ever get a true exposition for what it's doing.
Yeah, there's allusions to government sterilization plans, and we're given a sense from broadcasts that there's this, very obvious crisis that the world's responding to, but that's really it. It's all shading, There's no exposition that bogs down what is essentially the story of a woman trapped in her own home, fighting desperately to survive against a constantly, reappearing threat.
Oh, exactly. And speaking of those radio broadcasts, I loved that was Iggy Pop.
Oh my God. I don't know how I didn't lead with this, but the cameos in this movie, and I want to ask you a question. Did you notice the most notable cameo in the film who is not Iggy Pop? The pilot of the boat, the pilot of the strange paddle boat device that ferries Mo, the Dylan McDermott ostensible main character, that's sort of undermined later in the film, and his kind of much more interesting and frankly wonderful sort of colleague and sidekick Shades, played by John Lynch, who's a great character. We'll get to him in a minute. He seems to basically love meditating, doing drugs, and looking cool as fuck. So he's kind of the winner for me. But no, the guy who pilots their trip from the scrapyard to the city where the main character Jill lives is Lemmy from motherfucking Motorhead.
Oh.
And the song he puts on in the craft is Motorhead, which is amazing.
Yeah, I'm not a big Motorhead fan, but I don't really know anything about it.
I didn't know he was in this. I was just filled with the raw delight as a Motorhead fan to see Lemmy as a water taxi driver in a dystopian nightmare film. Really awesome. So the fact that he, this frankly kind of does Repo Man one better. And I'm not ripping on Repo Man. They got Circle Jerks to be the fucking house band of the movie. That's pretty incredible. But again, Iggy Pop plays, what's his name? Oh yeah, Angry Bob, the radio host, Angry Bob.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Iggy Pop, and
his appearance in Snow Day, what was meant to be the Pete and Pete movie, is one of my favorite appearances in film history, especially in a Disney film.
Yeah, he was perfect as the radio guy too. It's a perfect voice for the apocalypse.
Reading about the film, I was amazed at how steeped in subcultural oddities that Richard Stanley was intent on making it. He wanted Psychic TV. Well, he cites Psychic TV, the legendary British industrial / avant-garde pop act, to be an inspiration for some of the television broadcasts, which admittedly, they don't come close to Paul Verhoeven's absolute mastery of fake television, but his sense of sort of like a psychedelic nightmare future is very well expressed in this movie, and it is really something else. So when he incorporates these incredibly recognizable figures of freakdom into the film, it gives you a sense that the people he was in league with in making this, they got it. How effective this movie was and how interesting and dark this movie was. So, I don't know. It's always cool when something exists as a product of its time that seemed to have a potency that attracted some of the most notable voices of that generation.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely noticed that too, even though I didn't know Lemmy exactly. But Hardware, it definitely was a product of its time, and certainly it attracted not the pop elements, but a lot of the underground and weird elements, which I think really definitely says something about this movie, like Iggy Pop, Lemmy, as you mentioned, and there's a bunch of other punk stuff on the TVs. I think it was Gwar and Ministry. But it really reminded me of, I talked to you about this guy, Sogo Ishii, Josh. He did Burst City, Crazy Thunder Road. Those were back in 80, 82, I think. But he's a Japanese director, and he did a lot of really similar things 10 years earlier. There's a lot of low budget. Actually, a lot of it was post-apocalyptic stuff, too, which just about these grungy motherfuckers out in the desert. And in some of his movies, they were actually punk bands, actual punk bands that people would know very well. So it actually, part of me was wondering, did Richard Stanley, does he know of Ishii's work? Did he watch his stuff, or did they just happen to be working in similar ways?
Well, I can't speak to Richard Stanley's personal relationships around the film, but he is one of the strangest humans ever. And I recently had occasion here in New York City, the Big Apple, center of the world where I live. I'm told it was the center of the world before I moved here, but now I feel like that's really been kind of come to roost. You know what I mean?
Shut up, Josh.
Well, anyways, Richard Stanley managed to sort of make it into mainstream cinema through Hardware and the subsequent Dust Devil. And all of this culminated in him being hired to make The Island of Dr. Moreau for New Line Cinema in 1996. New Line Cinema, of course, probably, I don't know, would you describe them as the defining, them and Miramax, the defining production houses of the 90s?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, Miramax definitely changed the game for independent film. I could tell this was an early one when I saw the Weinstein brothers in the opening credits, and they were listed out as two people. I thought that was funny rather than listed out as their corporation. Just brought me back to the 90s, those good old days.
Days we can barely recall. Well, you can slightly better than I.
Yeah, don't bring my age into this again.
But yeah, so Stanley was supposed to make The Island of Dr. Moreau. I will not attempt to synopsize the entire documentary, but a film was made relatively recently called Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau, that investigates the total meltdown of this $35 million turd starring Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando. And suffice to say, Stanley's vision of the Island of Dr. Moreau is deeply ritualistic and fetishized as much as Hardware is. And we'll get into the visual aesthetic of Hardware, which is fucking fascinating. But he wanted to make this incredibly intense version of the Island of Dr. Moreau. People have seen the film that actually came out. He was replaced, I want to say, like a week into making this movie, had a mental breakdown, and escaped into the Amazon jungle around the set of the Island of Dr. Moreau.
Wow.
Lived with a family he found in the jungle for a time, then snuck back onto the set of Island of Dr. Moreau to become an extra to spy on the production of the film being made without him. So he is not like most humans. He's not like most directors, but he's also not like most humans because, you know, the project he did immediately before Hardware was moving to Afghanistan to document the Soviet war in Afghanistan. And, you know, he basically, you know, saw action in a siege during that war and, you know, had really gone deep into joining like guerrilla Muslim factions while in Afghanistan. So this is someone who is consumed by his work. This is not, you know, a Hollywood journeyman filling out a resume. This Richard Stanley is certifiably a freak. And that's kind of what makes this movie so fascinating, is that he manages to blend so many really intense images into a coherent film. Because there's a lot of ways this could have devolved into sort of like a sub-Jodorowsky garbage pile. But instead, it really maintains a tension that is pretty remarkable, given how vast his vision is for the film.
Jeez, yeah, wow. I had no idea about any of that before this, but I mean, it definitely makes sense. As while watching the movie, I could tell. I mean, that's all in there. I could tell that there's something. This guy has definitely gone through a lot, and you can feel the pain. I think this movie has a lot of pain involved, both in apparently the director, but also in the making of the movie. It just feels like that. I mean, we've talked a lot about the way it looks, but even down to the themes and all these emotions of the film. This movie was really, it felt like it was born out of intense trauma. And I think that all comes across. And it definitely makes sense now that hearing about all that shit that he went through. But yeah, you're right. This definitely isn't the work of Hollywood. This isn't, this movie, it feels like something really strange, really special. You know, it's especially present in the way the robot works. I mean, the way we've already talked about how he feels and how he looks, but like just even the way he kills people, those fangs you mentioned. When he stabs you, you get dosed with this hallucinogenic drug, and it's so this isn't just a physical pain. This is a movie. It's a horror movie. It assaults, of course, the flesh, as it's brought up all the time, but also just it goes after the mind.
Well, I think that my favorite note in the movie, that it's just for a moment, I don't know if you caught this, but in singing the virtues of the Mark 13 as a population control device, the very cheerful, you know, whatever ad man's recording this pitch for the Mark 13 mentions that it's actually pleasurable for the victims of the Mark 13 to die at its hands, such as its gentle touch. And then we're forced to reconcile that with this shambolic, eerie, almost undead-like creature that continually reinvents itself to sink these massive syringes into people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely noticed that. And not even in contrasting with the visuals of the robot, but also we get to see it when Mo is stabbed by the robot and is dying on the floor. That is a nightmare. He's not enjoying that at all. I mean, there's the robot like weirdly shot looming in the background with like zooming in and out, and there's worms, and he starts cutting up his arms. It's like, this is terrifying. This isn't the peaceful journey that the ad man promised. And I think that's, as we get to experience that we just get to experience all this while the hero is dying. And it's like, geez, I was watching, I was just like, holy shit, that was a crazy scene and so good. And because, as we were talking about earlier, there's really so little exposition We really don't have any idea what's going on, where this could be going. I think that's one of the main benefits of this movie is that it doesn't follow this formula. We really have no idea what's going to happen. And there's clues, there's all these little phrases and things that they find and things that they talk about. But most of them are just, baseless and conjectures from characters and propaganda. And it's just like, I feel like Hardware is just this really bleak look at our hopeless existence.
Yeah, I think it's about living in a world where the constant threat of destruction leads to rampant government totalitarianism. And, what does it mean when our lives are reduced to surviving day to day, knowing that in addition to a toxic world wrought at the hands of global war is now under the control of a government seeking to eliminate as much of its population as possible. So there's this just unavoidable nihilism about the movie that gives it this it's one of the most out-of-body films I've seen, where everything that happens is heightened and pushed to the edge of exhaustion. And these are characters who, and again, the more I think about it, actually, Fury Road gives you more exposition than this movie gives you, Like, we don't know, the Dylan McDermott's Moses, or Mo, as he's known in the film, works for the Corps, whatever that is. Jill is an artist making horrifying sculptures alone in this massive loft space as she's spied on by her lecherous neighbor Lincoln. To what end, we don't know.
Oh, yeah. I love Lincoln. He's a great character. Just terrifying character.
Yeah, like it's sort of, everything is hazy and feverish, and Jill is constantly smoking these legalized marijuana cigarettes, which is by the way, it's a trope of the Philip K. Dick universe, is that in most of his futuristic stories, everyone is smoking legalized, corporately manufactured marijuana. So that was a nice nod to that thread. But yeah, we're not given a sense of arc at all in this movie. We're really caught up in this nightmare. And resolution is not the goal of the movie. We watch someone essentially survive for another day and lose horribly. That's the film.
Oh, yeah, that is absolutely the film. I just want to step back a little bit to go back to Lincoln, because I love that character. I thought he was perfect for this movie. Because I think in another movie, he would have seemed like just this fake, like a forced cliche sort of person, just because they needed some more bodies for the robot to get to. He's sleazy, he's this lecherous neighbor. We've seen him a million times, and he does lots of things with him spying on Jill, and then in the end he tries to rape her. But I think that's usually a lazy approach for a storyteller. But here, I don't know what it was. It's hard to pin down exactly, but he just worked so well. He didn't seem like an add-in. He seemed like the exact kind of person that would be here in this world of Hardware. I don't know. He didn't seem out of place at all. He just seemed necessary. He seemed totally necessary to the movie, and he just really fit.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said about the introduction of characters. We're not burdened by the sense of everything needing to have some sort of elaborate context. People arrive and are churned through this horrible machine, and that's kind of the point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just like in our reality too. I mean, they all have this. All these characters, they have this sense of self. Lincoln doesn't feel like stand-in rapist number one. He feels like the shitty guy that's lived his entire life here in this awful world. He's got age. He's got that sense. I don't know. He's just like he feels like he's there. And like all the characters in the movie, it's like each of them have been in Hardware for decades, and they weren't just made for the movie. They have that weight to them, like a real person has that weight. I mean, everyone moves and behaves with a lethargy that just seems to have come from living in this post-apocalyptic nightmare. And it's not just the main characters that we talked about. Lincoln, it's like Shades, all these people, even the useless cops that show up near the end.
I would say in the pantheon of useless cops / security guards, this film has some great useless cops in it who meet a wonderful end. Honestly, one of the best gore scenes I've ever seen.
Oh, totally.
There's a great body being crushed in half by closing hydraulic doors, which is, if you're going to rip a body in half, I say let it be by hydraulic doors. And man, if someone is not torn apart in pretty horrifying detail, that's a great scene.
Oh, absolutely. I love that scene. One of the best. And I love how at first he sort of gets stuck in there and we're not sure. We think, "Oh, maybe he can get out of there. Maybe he can escape." Nope. He just falls in and gets door crushed. So good. But it's just another great example of that, the impersonal aspect of death in this movie. Just like the way the characters die. We're not, we were talking earlier about the impersonality of the robot, but the door, just thinking about what it means to be killed by a fucking door.
I want to talk to you about one of the most striking visual choices that Stanley made in the film, which is the constant. He laces together a sense of the world of hardware through a myriad array of screens and diagrams and ritualistic shots of art created within the context of the film. But we're sort of given. There's so many miniature constructs within the overarching framework of hardware where we see text, we hear the radio, we see maps, we see diagrams. Like, I was fascinated by that because it created this very rich visual world where we almost got a taste of how the people in the world of hardware interact with that world, almost from a first-person perspective. And it made it feel very lived for a movie that is honestly kind of a slight. It's not a long movie. There's not a lot of detail that speaks towards the world. But what we walk away with mostly is a very lived-in feeling of the visual aesthetic of that universe. And I was really impressed by that. And there's so few movies that really put the viewer in the position of the characters that thoroughly.
Yeah, actually, I noticed that too. It really came across to me as well that I really noticed all those things that you mentioned, like the diagrams, the maps. It really felt like all that stuff was there to create that sense of space that you're talking about. But for me, it really felt like it did a great job of separating everyone too, because everyone was really in their own little spaces. I thought that was wonderful, the way that we get that sense of construction about how the world, everyone has their own place where they belong. We had Jill's apartment. Jill's pretty much never leaves her apartment except for some couple scenes. But like, there's the weird scrap guy who sells his scrap stuff, and he's got that space. And Shade's in his apartment, and Lincoln's apartment, and Mo. He's actually harder to pin down. I think he's sort of a wanderer. Maybe he's just like belongs in that desert. But like, it just all of them like really existed separately, and I don't think that was an accident. I think that's a huge part of this movie, that all of them are really just alone in the face of this unending danger, not just from the robot, which is the, obvious metaphorical sense of the danger, but, everything around them, the radiation, the starvation, the government. And that really just points to just life, just the danger of life itself.
Yeah, a deep sense of paralysis and a deep sense of being unable to touch or reach others. Even the, one of the absolute best shots in the film is in the midst of this sort of erotic montage of Jill and Mo, having sex. There's a shot of them in the shower together, and he at one point reaches his hand up, and we realize that he has this like bionic grafted on hand.
Oh my God, I can't believe we haven't talked about that.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, I thought that was amazing. It just out of nowhere, it reminded me a lot of Luke's hand in Jedi, but I think it's even better. The one in Jedi, it's just such a close, obvious connection to Vader. The hand. They both got the hand. They're both baby bad. It's sort of simplistic, but here it's sort of simplistic too. But I think the reveal was really shocking to me. I didn't really see it coming. But it's also, I think the connection's a little broader, a little, we sort of get it, but it's not quite as, father-son type deal. It's really just, especially in relationship with this robot hunting them all down, like that connection between man and machine, the fact that a part of himself is the same as the thing that's trying to kill him. I thought that was great. Very cool.
Yeah, so, also I liked that when they get back to this cityscape, Mo's sidekick friend, Shades, basically goes back to his apartment to what seems like take acid, light incense, and meditate. And at that point in the film, most of the characters who have been really given FaceTime with are in such ridiculous... Well, you pointed this out so well, but like, you have Jill, the perpetually stoned artist living alone, locked in this, high-rise apartment tower. You have her neighbor Lincoln, this truly noxious human being dripping with sweat, wearing latex gloves, and taking, peeping Tom shots of Jill as she goes about her life and sex life with Mo. You have Mo charging off to gather hardware and talk to people, and you have Shades, tripping and meditating, and everyone is just so separate in these spaces that seem both large and full of materials, but also empty and, so unorganic. So he has all the characters confined in their quadrants, floating like so many cherries in Jell-O.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like cherry. Yeah. But no, I definitely, it's so true. I mean, I love that you're talking about that. Like, there's so much fucking clutter everywhere. But everything does feel so empty, so unlived in.
There's no community. There's the only thing that bonds these people together in this dystopian America is their complete suspended animation of life. There's no progress forward. Procreation itself is demonized, not just casually by the government. There's no sense of connection. Sex yields nothing, both emotionally, metaphorically, and, again, procreatively.
Actually, it's funny you should mention that, Josh, about the progress, because as you know, I do a lot of research for this. So in this week's episode, I took 1 second to look at the DVD cover, and I believe the tagline for this movie is "You can't stop progress." Yeah, totally. I think the idea of wasted sex is nearly constant. It's always for such a sexual movie. I think it talks very much about what sex is when it's lacking everything else. And I think you might remember there's a scene where Jill says that having children, there's like the 3 S's of having children in this day and age. There's like stupid, suicidal. What was the last one?
Oh God, selfish.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But anyway, whatever it was, I really was hit by this concept, like how we were talking about Bronson earlier. How when you have a character that's imprisoned, it really just talks to our own psychological imprisonment. I feel like that same sort of stuff with dystopian settings where, we have this urge to survive. And even though you and I we're not wandering deserts, scavenging for little bits of metal and selling to some guy. Well, maybe you are. I don't know. But I think that this concept of parenthood, that relates to us too, even though we're not in that space. Myself personally, as a man getting on in years, I've started thinking about children and, what that means to me. But, you talked about that. You mentioned the word nihilism a little earlier. And I think this movie is nihilism just gone rampant. The idea of children, I like, as I was saying, that sounds like something fun, having kids. It sounds like a really interesting way to progress or to continue with my life. But then there's also a really small part of me that thinks, God, is this that selfish of me? This need for me, that part of me that wants to survive, that part of me that is absolutely afraid of death. That part of me wonders, is having kids selfish, regardless of where we are? just on a whim give something life just so it's going to die one day. Is that okay? It's just like that. I thought about that while watching this movie, and it's just like something. Parenthood, there's a lot of reasons, but ultimately this is for ourselves. And whether this is, the world of hardware or suburban America, I think there really is something strange in how blindly we just perpetuate this human existence.
Yeah, no, and I think the metaphor, the visual metaphor that most captures what you're talking about is when Jill chooses to paint the skull, the sort of, the center of this bizarre mechanism, Mark 13. She paints it as the American flag. So unavoidably, we're looking at a machine that has no thoughts, no feelings, no voice, just programming, just a simple directive, which is to eliminate human life and presumably thin out the population so the remaining elites can maximize their share of whatever resources remain. And that's all it's doing. It's not even a villain. It's not even cruel. It's just doing this thing it's supposed to do. And with Jill's ironic paint job, you kind of walk away being like, what is the apparatus of government and the state other than to perpetuate itself and to maintain itself. And so we're watching the most brutal, direct vision of that, which is to watch a construct mindlessly destroy human life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's right. That's great. We blindly do our thing. The government does its thing. We're all just doing what we're supposed to do, and we don't really think about too much else. I think that's great. Which is why I can't believe we didn't bring up the hand thing earlier, because that's like, it's such a great symbol for this idea to just be saying, hey guys, it's like the hardware is just saying, hey, we're all machines here.
Yeah, well, and also, like, there's no martyr, We're not watching someone suffering and agonizing for this great goal. She's just as, she's channeling the confusion and fear and isolation that everyone shares in the film. And it's not to undermine the government or to make a point or to, there's no, though it's inherently a political movie, it's not saddled with this hero complex that would, I think, have made it pretty tacky or boring if this had gone in a direction of, like, overthrowing something, or it's just this brutal tale of survival with no seeming out.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, this definitely is a political movie in some ways, but I think why it's successful for me, at least, is that it isn't trying to make political points. It's not it doesn't have an agenda. It's just really a discussion of a mindset or the time frame that it was in, perhaps. Like, I mean, I usually tune out when movies try to tell me what to think, tell me what to do. But this doesn't do that. This is just pointing something out. It wasn't for anything or any cause. This is just trying. This wasn't trying to convince me of anything other than that, this wasteland of human life that we're in, and just how thoroughly we're all controlled.
Well, and the basic that it also illustrates this, like, the death of empathy in a world defined by just the most basic requirements to continue moving forward. And I don't know, it's a movie that feels at times incomplete. It's a movie that sometimes feels like it deserves more, but it's almost impossible to say what it needs more, because as a taste of what Richard Stanley is capable of creating, it is unforgettable. And just a strange, brilliant little movie that it's the kind of thing you cannot imagine. Obviously Miramax is in a different place in 1990, but no one would swing at this movie in 2015. And it is really wonderful to go back to a time where that very real, gut-churning fear for what technology represented to humankind is really explored in such a disturbing, unnerving, and creative way.
Oh, totally. It's so different now. I mean, it's such a different place. We're in the middle of it. We're just in the midst of the technology place, and when we make movies about technology, it seems like it doesn't have those same underlying emotions that movies used to have back in, like, the 90s and early 2000s. Back when we were still on the cusp of where we are now. I mean, now it just feels almost like whining about what's already going on and not really doing much else than that. But I think back before in the 90s, especially, and Hardware, definitely, it was really looking at the unknown, like, what is this? And I think J-horror, that was maybe the final push before we're caught up to where we are right now, like The Ring and Cairo, all those movies about internet and technology gonna kill us. I brought up Sogo Ishii earlier, and that's definitely falls into this area. I mean, he was back in the 80s, but I think his follow-up, I think he even got more famous. The guy did Tetsuo. I couldn't help but think of Tetsuo too. I mean, halfway through, I was thinking about Sogo Ishii. I was wondering if Stanley they were made very close together. So I wasn't even sure if he could have even seen any of Tsukamoto's work. And it just, like, again, is it that he really likes this one director and he's just sort of copying it, or really was that zeitgeist, that sort of that fear? I mean, there's some similarities there between Tetsuo's transformation and the world of Hardware.
Oh, I mean, certainly fans of Tetsuo's spinning metal penis will love elements of the Mark 13's pretty crude devices of extermination, which include that same bizarre, drill-like device.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we haven't even really talked about why he's called the Mark 13. Like all those good movies before it makes use of those Bible verses. And well, this was somewhere in Mark chapter 13. There's just a line, I don't even know contextually what it's about, but it's no flesh shall be spared. And we've talked a lot about the mechanical aspect to all the deaths and how impersonal they are. And just here again, just calling it the Mark 13, I think it really just points to that, man versus machine, flesh versus technology. I mean, these just connections that we have with all those things that we create, and then all those things that just sort of end up killing us as well.
Well, it's also this idea that what if we built things and they did exactly what they were supposed to do? Like, this is a movie about nuclear war. It's a movie about we build these things, they do exactly what they're supposed to do, and that is the nightmare. Nothing is malfunctioning. Things are happening exactly as they are intended to. Because this is what, a total remove from human interaction, community, empathy, and any context for what it means to be part of something leaves us. Like the fear of the technocrat, the fear of the futurist. This movie is, I think, and this is the kind of review capping garbage I usually love to spew, but it resonates as much now as it did then. And I think that, certainly if you're listening and you liked Fury Road, you're listening and you like Fallout 3, this is in that pantheon.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there are a lot of similarities between Fury Road. We've mentioned it a couple of times. And, certainly the sand, the setting, all those, little deformed weirdos running around. I think that definitely helps. But, I personally, I got a little beef with all the people's reactions to Mad Max, but I couldn't help but think of the new Mad Max after that weird. I just thought the reaction to Mad Max coming out was just really strange. The way it was called like a feminist movie, and everyone was going on and on about Furiosa. It was baffling to me. And I think watching Hardware, without being an asshole, all these people making those statements, it just showed me how fucking stupid they were, how ignorant they were of film history. So many people are going out there just dismissing Max's character from Fury Road as though he was completely unimportant, just because he didn't say any lines, or just because they wanted to have a strong female character. But this wasn't Futurosa's movie or whatever fucking name is. This was both of their movies. If you missed the emotional element, that journey that Max was going on, that is a huge portion of the movie, just as much as, her journey. And I thought it was just the way people were going on and on about this movie. It just, it just felt like it was completely politicized and without actually looking into what the movie was about.
Well, there's the two arcs, the political arc of Furiosa and the emotional arc of Mad Max, which frankly are brilliantly intertwined to make a very compelling movie.
Sure, but to label Mad Max as a feminist movie, it's just silly. I think it's silly. And, it just made me think, like, do they only watch Hollywood blockbusters? Because, just because this is the first time you've happened to seen something like this in a movie doesn't mean that this is the first time it's ever happened before. And after sitting through Hardware and watching Hardware and loving Hardware, it was just like, hey, guys, have you seen Hardware that came out fucking 25 years earlier? They should probably see 1,000 million other wonderful movies that have powerful female performances and female characters. But sure, if you want to start with Hardware, that's fine, because Hardware is fucking brilliant in the way that it uses its characters and creates its characters and the way it treats its characters, both male and female. I love the way that it keeps moving between characters. Like we was talking about earlier, it started with that guy in the desert, and then it finally, moves to Mo, and then it does settle on Jill, and she does end up being the most important character of the movie that the character that this movie cares about the most. Not that it doesn't care about the other characters, but this does turn into her movie about halfway through, and not because she's a woman, but because she is a person.
No, effortlessly, this movie removes the gendered context for suspense that exists in most horror and science fiction movies, where we're not worried about her because she's a woman. We're worried about her because what's happening is fucking terrifying, and no one has distinguished themselves, male or female, as being competent in the movie at all. So it was nice to have that. Just not even, it doesn't seem like anyone was remotely fucking concerned with that. And obviously, it delivers. She's fucking great. I don't know a lot about what happened to that actress. I'm going to click one button and we'll reveal even slightly more about her. But yeah, Stacey Travis. She was in Ghost World and Traffic. She was in Intolerable Cruelty. She was in The Great Soul Plane, which we've all seen and loved. Yeah, her career does not seem like it blossomed after this, which is kind of amazing because she's so good in it.
Oh, she was.
Yeah.
She was great. And I think to have a movie be about the apocalypse and about, survival, sex, creation, it really needs this voice. And it was great that Hardware focused on this voice. And I think, Mad Max, Hardware, they both had this voice. They were both interested in that, which is great. But I think also they're very different in a lot of ways, almost in opposition to each other. I think Mad Max is overwhelmingly optimistic. We were talking about the emotional and sort of political elements of the plot. Both are absolute success stories. Max forgives himself, leaves his ghosts behind. Furiosa, she overthrows her oppressors. It's makes you feel good, but I think Hardware really digs deep and goes in the totally opposite direction. And I like what you were talking about earlier with the lack of heroes in Hardware. This isn't about overcoming the problems in the world. This really just acknowledges that there is nothing we can do to escape them. It's about the government, but it also isn't. It's just about that complete lack of escape. And one moment that I loved, it was like maybe my favorite scene in the movie, was near the end when, what's his name? Dylan something or other?
You nailed it. I'm sure Dylan is very excited that you've now acknowledged his humanity. I will pass that along the next time me and the Dill Dog hang out.
Nice. Well, anyway, I just, that scene where he thinks he's finally killed the robot, and he comes, they're celebrating and hanging out, and then the robot fucking comes back and pushes Jill out the window. In a lot of most shitty movies, it would be about her being rescued. Maybe the man rescuing her, but yes, that's a common one. But just the fact that she needs to be rescued by him. But in Hardware, that isn't there. It's fucking hopeless. He's it's great. He's just sort of leaning out the window. Hey, I can't do anything. You should probably just jump. It's so good. It's like a wonderful twist on the tropes of storytelling. Like she's not a damsel in distress. He's not a hero. They're just people, and it's all just fucked up. It's so fucking good. And that guy, Dylan, whatever his name is, he's perfect. He's just, I sort of described him earlier, but he's sort of manly, sort of good looking, but he's also just sort of, not exactly what we look for in a leading man. He's sort of like I thought he sort of looked like melting wax or something. I don't know. But he comes very close to being that manly man, but he's just not quite it. I just thought he was very well cast. He was perfect.
I will say I could have seen a Bill Paxton in this.
Ugh, I hate that guy.
Listeners, don't worry. We'll be plumbing that rich vein of conversation in subsequent episodes of The Real Deal. But speaking of plumbing and veins, there's a scene with poop in Vacation. That's all I got. Moving from a dystopian bleak vision of a post-apocalyptic nightmare, we move to a similarly bleak apocalyptic vision of suburban life in modern America with the easily grimace-worthy but somehow redeemed remake/reboot of the National Lampoon Vacation series starring Ed Helms and Christina Applegate. I fucking loved this movie. I did not think it was going to be good.
I loved it too. I also thought it was going to be terrible, but I had a great time.
I laughed so much. I gotta say, the few real joys in life in this day and age are when you go to a mainstream comedy and it's not fucking garbage. I can't tell you, Trainwreck was terrible. Anchorman 2, unsurprisingly, but still, I guess I'm a glutton for this sort of thing. That was so bad. There's just so few consistently start to finish funny movies that get made in the world of, wide release American film. Though strangely, this movie's release history is really weird. It was, I think, pretty heavily critically panned and kind of hard to see in a lot of theaters, at least for a while. But holy shit, the comedy of the summer for me. I was so into this movie.
Yeah, I think what it did really well was it returned to the day and age where movies didn't have to make any sense. I think we've sort of lost that, but it seemed, like probably within the last 10, 15 years, the movie making has become really obsessed with making sense. And I think this has started to, shift with the realistic superhero movie from like The Dark Knight probably started that all off. But if we can't explain every little fucking thing, we can't believe it or enjoy it. I think Vacation is so refreshing. Like it returns to that comedy style where it isn't about telling a story or making each scene believably connect together. It's just about making me laugh, and this definitely does that.
Well, I think you hit on what made the original series so good, which is that you have these very archetypal set pieces that are not there to blow your mind. They're just great set pieces, like a shitty car, an attractive woman, an attempt to take a family swim together, visiting someone you resent. This is it's all set up. None of this is, arguably the least subtle film I've ever seen, from people bathing in literal shit to fat-dicked weathermen to Ed Helms driving a four-wheeler through a fucking cow.
Yes, through a cow. So good. Yeah, I love that this is just one of those comedies where we're always like, that could not have just happened. And then it's like, no fucking shit, it couldn't happen. This is a fucking movie. Now just laugh at it.
It was just funny. We in our, our hushed, Vatican Curia-esque pre-show conversation that we try to keep drowned in shadow and mystery. There's almost not a lot to say about Vacation other than that it's a funny movie about the summer, and I don't even know how long it's been since I've seen a movie that's just a road trip movie that's fucking funny, that has a very delineable arc that delivers in the end in a big way.
Oh, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about the other kind of comedy. I don't think we should just get rid of those. I love movies like Superbad, something like that, where there is a deeper connection to the characters, there's an arc. But I don't think that we need to throw away things like Vacation. I mean, this reboot or whatever it is, it reminded me of those movies I grew up watching as a kid. Like all those like original Vacation, Christmas Vacation.
Well, my initial, being a Hebrew, I did not do a lot of Christmasing until middle school. And then in middle school, I went to go stay at a friend's house in Vermont for Christmas, and it was wonderful. We put a tree together and, did whatever Christmas shit you people do with your weird time. But the thing that really stuck out to me was that the entire family got together and watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And for my money, when you're 12, there may not be a funnier movie.
Oh, exactly. These movies were, maybe it's just because we were growing up then, but these movies were perfect for growing up. I loved it. And I remember coming home from school and just tuning into Comedy Central, because this was always playing on Comedy Central every day, twice a day. Just take off the backpack, plop down on the couch, and just start watching movies like this with John Candy and Steve Martin and, the guy who's in the original, whatever his name is, that, and just love, Throw Mama from the Train. I've seen that movie like 100 times.
Oh my God. I don't think I've seen that in 20 years.
Oh, you should.
Yeah. Wow. I will, I'm going to go ahead and dust off my VHS copy of Throw Mama from the Train that I've kept in a glass case above my mantle, specifically for this kind of occasion.
As you should. But yeah, I mean, Vacation it was good. It was all about the jokes and just going from one joke to the other. And just like running gags, all that stuff that's sort of been, abandoned as old school comedy. It's just great. I mean, that shitty car. The
shitty car, what, the Prancer?
Yes, the Prancer. So good.
In the hall of endlessly entertaining set pieces, this shitty car is so fucking good. One of the running jokes is that this horrible, I want to say Yugoslavian minivan nightmare has a panel array of buttons, all of which are extremely cryptic. The best of which has to be the swastika button, which I have to say, my one disappointment about the movie is that they acknowledge it's called Chekhov's swastika button, where if you acknowledge the swastika button, I would very much like to see what happens when it is pressed. And that's the one dangling chad of the movie, where they do not deliver on the swastika button, but just the joke of Ed Helms as the oh man, can you imagine Ed Harris in this movie? Holy shit.
Yes. Oh my God, that would have propelled this movie into a whole other realm.
I'm going to tell you a brief story of 2015 living. I was on OkCupid because I'm lonely and my life is a broken wreck of what was once a vibrant, thriving culture, much like the dystopian world of hardware. I was on OkCupid talking to a woman who does like Ren Fair stuff and Comic-Con shit. And I guess she'd actually gone to Comic-Con to be Furiosa this year, which I'm not going to lie, that does pique the interest. Anyways, she like does jousting and shit as part of this Ren Fair world. And I was like, oh my God, have you ever seen Knight Rider?
Oh God, I knew that's where this was going.
Well, if you bring up Ed Harris around old Josh, you're going to hear a little bit about the movie, which opens with him whipping himself naked, standing in the middle of a lake, because it's one of the best openings to a film I've ever seen. But if you like the idea of seeing the rigid buns of an Ed Harris circa 1980 whatever, Knight Riders is really your film. But anyways, I asked this woman, have you ever seen Knight Riders, being a contemporary jouster? And she said, Josh, we watch it before every jousting match.
Woo, that must have been it.
And I said, be right back, getting an engagement ring.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, how is life on OkCupid?
It's a wonderful place that is in no way a depressing slog through the most selfish, depraved aspects of human culture.
No, that's where love is.
Yeah. So my review of Vacation is go see Knight Riders because Ed Harris's butt looks incredible in it.
Oh yeah, that's actually the endorsement I was going to give, because that's really all we were missing from making Vacation whole.
Wait, what? The absence of Ed Harris's bare ass in Vacation?
Yeah, like this movie just all it needed was Ed Harris's ass, and it would have been perfect.
Well, like in IMDb, they have like director, shit this director does in every movie.
Mm-hmm.
Mine, if I ever become the Coppola-esque director, I know I will one day be.
Coppola. Yeah, you actually remind me of Coppola.
What, because I'm white?
No, just like...
Because I'm white, Charles?
I don't know, the beard, the glasses...
I want to.
Your beard.
It could. Yeah, it's the beard.
Yeah, and the glasses.
I don't have glasses. No, that is
what?
Yeah,
you don't. But he had glasses.
Excuse me.
He has glasses.
Oh yeah, Coppola had glasses, and that's why people listen to our show, because of tidbits like that. We really get behind the people who make the movies and dig in there and reveal stuff like Francis Ford Coppola wore glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And no, long story short. We'll bring this episode to a close with a rousing endorsement of the hypnotic, bleak world of hardware and the completely frivolous, literally balls out fantasticness of that Vacation reboot. It is so rare to see, in 2015, talking about a quality science fiction movie that isn't garbage is so rare. And talking about a mainstream comedy that has crotch shots and vomiting and animals being abused in humorous ways. All the classic fonts of comedy that we've come to love as a nation. Two movies that deliver on maybe the two most disparate fronts we could have assembled for one episode.
Oh, absolutely. One was from the 90s. One desperately wanted to be from the 90s. But they both did exactly what they set out to do. And they both really delivered.
Charles, I'm gonna go ahead and say that this has definitely been the real deal. And I'm definitely Josh.
And I am certainly Charles.
Yeah, drink sewage and don't trust robots. And this has been another classic episode of The Real Deal, Josh and Charles.